Hello, everyone. I'm pleased to have an expert with us. He's involved as an energy management consultant. Right now, we have with us Arjun Merkap. Let's listen to him. Over to you, Arjun.
Yeah. Hi, Subodh, and everyone listening in. So, yeah, thanks for this opportunity. My name is Anjan Kumar Merkap, and I come from the state of Odisha. And currently, I'm working as a energy consultant. So the journey for me, I think I'll just give a quick background so that everyone gets a perspective of where I come from, what's the sort of story I have. It's a typical engineering background with a couple of years of experience that I have in industrial automation systems. And then I did a post that I did my MBA in finance. And then I joined a financial services firm, which does credit ratings for asset-backed securities. So uh, quite a bit technical in terms of the work that I had related to finance. In 2018, I got an opportunity to work with a startup for energy who wanted to capitalize on what India was about to go transition towards. So I would say I was lucky enough to be, in that position where I could do that, make that transition, be bold enough to sort of leave a Fortune 500 and join a small company. But that has given me a lot of learning. And within the last 6.5 years, I would say I've looked at all this domains of energy. So across electric mobility, energy storage, batteries, the lithium ion manufacturing space, the projects that come up in grids, and also making grids smarter. So smart grid projects, distributed assets, and then looking at all the financial models and stuff like that. So that's been basically my journey for the past 6 years in this space. So really this conversation that I'm planning to have today with you, Subodh, is also with some purpose. So my real aim here is that I can talk a lot on these items, and kind of each one has its own story. Huge, let's say, ambitions from the policy side, huge ambitions from the corporate side, a lot of think tanks working on this front. But probably my message or my purpose really in this short, I would say short, but I know it's roughly a few minutes. But my idea here is to actually talk about what I feel very deeply about, which is the decision making towards decarbonization.
Okay.
So the real aim that from my experience, from my knowledge, from what I understand, and something that I feel is
Mm,
very deeply misunderstood by a
mm,
lot of people,
mm.
probably from the corporates, from people that I interact with on a daily basis, is how do you do this transition that we're talking about of
Yeah,
decarbonization?
yeah.
So there are aspects to it, of course. So some talk about financing is a big problem. Some talk about the technicals of it. Somebody's looking at EV, somebody's looking at hydrogen. Somebody's saying that something is working. Somebody says something is not working, like carbon capture. It's not a new technology. It's very old. Even electric mobility, it's not a new concept. It happened in the 1970s, but then never caught on. So there have been a lot of discussions and things like that. So I have a perspective on this, which I wanted to probably use this platform to.
Okay, let's have it.
Okay.
Let's have it.
So my thought process there is so about that. When you're looking at decarbonization, it's like a reinventing of the wheel. That's how I would say. So if you want to make the world a better and a safer and a uh, greener place, I think the difficult problem to be solved is how do you align 3 or 4 different stakeholders. It's not the technology that becomes a problem. It is not the financing that becomes a problem. Um, Alignment is the biggest problem. So what happens is that it's a very people problem rather than a really a technology problem or evolution problem, or let's say maturity of technology. So there will be technologies in various stages of its maturity curve. That is a given. So like for example, energy storage. In energy
Yeah.
storage, in there are lithium-ion batteries, which are
Yeah.
more mature. There are
Yeah.
sodium-ion batteries, which are up and coming. There are
Yeah.
solid batteries, which are at the R&D stage. And
Yeah.
then there are further batteries. So, I mean, that conversation is endless. But the main idea that I would like to like probably even have your views, and maybe we can have a discussion on this, is alignment.
Yeah.
Because if there is no intent or there is no alignment, we can keep running in circles. So I think to beat this, or to be able to figure out, and there are examples of this as well, there are various ways of solving a problem. A problem remains a problem as long as um, you are not able to come up with like the whole solution of it. If you just come up with, let's say, okay, I can finance you, and let's go find a technology that can fit the problem, I think then again it's not completely solved. You just have solved one part of it. You can make financing easier, you can make the technology safer, but what is the intent at the end of the day? And that has to be like a collective effort. So that's my biggest problem that I see, because um, everyone is still sort of thinking in silos. So when you look at policies, they are still being thought of in terms of, and that again is a operational challenge, I would say, in a lot of different areas. So for example, you are not allowed to think beyond what your silo is or what your line of thought has been. So if you're in the finance department, so the GST comes to you, and then there are batteries that are, some are getting taxed at 18%, some are getting taxed at 5%. That is because, again, batteries are a common issue. The same batteries get used up in electronics, which are mobile phones, and the same gets used up in the EVs. It is just that your the HSN code is the same because it's a lithium-ion battery, but the specs, the way that you use it, everything is different. The applications are different. So what happens is that the battery that you are importing, if it is for a EV application, you get taxed at 5%. But then if it is being used for a stationary application or for, let's say, a mobile phone application, typically it would get have a different slab of tax rates. And again, if you are swapping batteries, then it's a higher tax slab as compared to a fixed battery, which is getting charged.
Yeah.
So this is basically the end result of basically being not able to align on how you want to think of it. It's thinking in silos because of operational issues, because of the way that people have been
Yeah.
doing in the past. It's a cross-functional and a cross-dimensional problem which is being addressed just by that concerned person looking at his or her own domain. So, for example, if you look at the whole ecosystem of refueling, just let's take e-mobility as an example. So if you look at an electric vehicle and if you look at an ICE vehicle, when somebody is comparing the two, if you look at the vehicle just in itself, there might be a lot of similarities. But if you look
Yeah.
at the whole ecosystem, it's a huge difference. It's a huge paradigm shift. The oil industry is completely separate and the automobile industry is completely separate. The
Mm.
only point of interconnection is just the refueling petrol pump, and that
Yeah.
also for 5 minutes. But if you're looking at electric mobility and EVs, you can charge your vehicle at your home, at your office, along the highway, at your parking, at the office parking. It can be at your friend's house. It can be anywhere. So your refueling system and your driving system is completely different. And you cannot kind of just say that, okay, just because automobiles are being used in a certain way, like we can use the same EV in the same way. And then what happens is that, oh, we need certain amount of driving kilometers, the cost is different. It's the whole mindset that has to be different. That really is my biggest sort of, in certain areas it works out, that's not a huge problem.
Mm.
But if you fundamentally look at how decarbonization should be looked at, it has to be in a very collective and a holistic manner, where I know these are like words which get thrown around a lot, but let's even look at hydrogen. If you look at the whole ecosystem, right, the way oil is being used today, I would say oil is closely linked to how I would like to see hydrogen being used. So you would actually be producing hydrogen in the most cost-effective manner at one site, and then you would like to ship it across the world where it gets used everywhere else. So, for example, you use the solar to generate hydrogen because electricity is the biggest cost there,
Right.
and
Right.
you provide hydrogen across the globe in the most cost-effective manner because you cannot produce it and transport it anywhere cheaper in the world.
Yeah.
And then what happens is you use the hydrogen as your fuel. So you use it for your industries, you use it for your automobile, you use it for heating homes, you use it for gas, burning, cooking. So that becomes then a whole ecosystem. But if you say, I'm going to use only for green hydrogen production, and that is what is hydrogen for me, and then, I will use it for only a certain purpose or certain application. I think that's again, it's not going to cut the, whole thing out. That's been my real problem that I see that when somebody is looking at, um, again, it's a difficult problem to solve. I don't have a real, let's say, answer to how do you solve this question. Uh, but yes, that's where really the
Mm,
effort probably should go into that. If you
mm,
are coming from, let's say, a corporate, you're coming from the policy background, you're coming from a think tank. I think the first problem that needs to be solved is, can we bring five people from different domains, like somebody from application, somebody from the technology, somebody from the financing, on the
mm.
same page and have a cross-functional team work on it? Because that really will then, I mean, it does happen, but it gets lost in reports. I mean, you would have inputs, you would have all of those primary connections, secondary connections, you would get their inputs, you would put it out in a report.
Yeah.
But then the policies that come out, the actions that happen, then they
Yeah.
don't translate into those.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that's the main point that I just wanted to drive you.
I fully agree with you. This is actually, I'm now writing a book on public policy. It's called Public Policy and Public Change, a Fresh Approach. And in it is a point that some serious issues are multidimensional.
Yeah,
And we don't teach uh, students in public policy courses, those who are doing masters in public policy, etc., really how to handle these multidimensional issues which need some kind of coordination. We need sector knowledge and we need sector expertise, and we need them to do their own, but the whole picture also has to be there. And if the whole picture is not there, then the output or the outcome is very ineffective. And
yeah,
we don't really get the. So I've been writing, it's not yet written, but it will be, this is part of what I'm writing. And actually, I'm not focused so much as my example of this related to what you're saying will be in adaptation. That
yeah,
look, climate change has already happened. We already have flash floods. And we already have in Bangladesh, etc., the coastal area problems, and we have extreme weather. So all this will require, what should I say, a multidimensional approach. There's no way you can do it without that. Absolutely not. Because climate change, mitigation, which is what you are involved in right now, mitigation requires multidimensional and is helpful. But climate change adaptation cannot work if it's not multidimensional, because you inevitably run into interrelated issues.
exactly. Yeah,
You inevitably run into interrelated issues. So I fully agree with you on that point. That
yeah,
there's it's very difficult to do multidimensional things because the governments are set up on silos. Companies are set up in silos, and there's nobody really who can take advantage of the multisectoral. And even the international agencies are set up on silo lines. Everybody is there. So I agree with you that this is a big issue, and we will, as I said, my focus will be on trying to not go back to EVs and hydrogen and so on, but climate change, which is adaptation, which has basically been ignored quite a bit, especially in India, and try to set up the framework for that, that look, this is how you need the and yes, there are many people who are thinking of transition. You have to use the word decarbonization, but people also call transition energy transition. And then they talk about, for example, what you're going to do with the workers in the coal mines if you don't use coal.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you going to do with them? And if you collect so many taxes from petrol and petrol goes out, then where is your tax? How will you adjust the tax
I
system?
think I have few thoughts on this. So I would say that it's a very extremist view because it doesn't happen overnight. And it's more like this. I think you will probably be, correct me if I'm wrong, you'll be able to relate to this. So if a coal mine like is operating, and there is a certain life to it, and you're achieving economies of scale because of all of the years that you have already put into the let's say the feasibility report, that so many years will be used to at least achieve feasibility. So you would actually not increase your jobs accordingly. So it's not actually reskilling that becomes a problem. It's about skilling the people who are coming into the workforce.
Yeah, that of
So
course, that's a separate issue. That's a
yeah,
very, yeah, okay. Anyway,
it's about
I'm
phasing.
I'm talking very non-specifically because I don't know the details in India. I'm just saying that, I mean, the tax problem is certainly there because over time, the tax revenues, relative tax revenues, absolute may increase, but the relative share of fossil fuel-based tax revenues will go down. So you have to find some other source. So these are all issues that have to be looked at together. As you said,
Absolutely.
the financial is not just, of course, the financing, which you mentioned from your finance background, that is, of course, critical. But so all of the things are critical. But what has to happen is that not everybody has to work together, but a few key people have to work together to recognize the big picture.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's
Absolutely.
where the whole issue is, that we don't have that system of a few key people looking at the big picture. I
Exactly.
agree with you on
I
that.
al- I also see this like, as you've said, like, few key people. I think that's a really good way of putting it. Few key people. And then the change that happens is in steps instead
Yeah.
of a drastic shift.
Yeah.
Like, I like to use like what you say, Kaizen, right? So small but meaningful, impactful steps.
Yeah.
So if you do that, that's really a transition.
Yeah.
So when you look at energy transition, and but you do it with an impact and a purpose, and you do for small wins, because
Yeah.
that is what creates standards, benchmarks, positive
Mm,
vibes.
mm.
If you start looking at, okay, I want to do it completely, fresh, start from zero, bring everyone on board, let's have a huge meeting, that doesn't really work.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree with you. This is, there's no
That's the gist
dispute
of
here.
it.
There's no dispute here. In fact, it's going to be a key point in this public policy book, that both international agencies and governments, etc., need to decide. For just to have a little bit of diversion here, you know, uh, Mr. Gadkari, who is the Union Highway Minister, is very truthful. He keeps saying we have a very high automobile crash and death rates in India. And he actually doesn't know how to reduce it. He knows how to build highways. Okay, we are building more highways at a faster rate than ever before. He doesn't know how to reduce them because it's a multidimensional problem.
Absolutely.
Even if you reduce the number of crashes, to reduce the number of deaths, you need to have an ambulance that can get there in 3 minutes. He doesn't control the ambulances. So that's a multidimensional issue. And it's such a dimensional issue that even the US, though the things are better, is not able to reach its target. because you need, people to stop with drunken driving.
Yeah.
Or with now it's not drunken driving, but it's drugs driving. So this seatbelt people don't know how to do this. So it is a multidimensional issue there. We are also facing it in India. And Gadkari says, I feel embarrassed when I go to international conferences because we have such high rates. But he can't do anything about it because it's the same multidimensional issue. And the pandemic was a multidimensional issue, and that's the failure of the pandemic response is so clear that in the end, the world suffered huge losses of deaths and huge GDP declines, right?
Yeah.
But nobody can say, oh, we were very successful. Just look at your GDP numbers. If you aren't cheating on them, you will see that there is a decline in the growth rate and certainly even a decline in the GDP and the number of people dislocated, and nobody knows what to do about it. Nobody knows how to handle it. So multidimensional, or as you call them, cross-sectoral, these projects, they require a way of thinking that is generally not present.
Yeah, I
Right?
think I think it transcends now, like what you've said. I think it transcends like any other industry. I mean, it's not just about decarbonization, I guess. It's just because I have experience and that's where I came from. But the kind of examples that you are putting across, I think this seems to be probably a problem that needs to be addressed from the generational thought process that we have come through. So I think it's more probably, and decarbonization needs it the most because the transition that requires is fast.
Yeah.
Had it been very slow, stepped, throughout the next 20, 30 years is a very short time frame in the lifetime of humans. So for
Yeah.
us to do that, I think the biggest challenge comes out to be this sort of problem. But if you see, because the automobile industry is a 200-year-old industry, and then so basically norms have become set and you don't think so much about it. But I think the problem which you've said, I think the multidimensional or the cross-functional problems, I think it's being faced by every industry, I guess, yeah. Oh, I think you've muted yourself.
I agree with you on that. And as I said, I am hoping that this book I'm writing on public policy and public change will have an impact at the very high levels, that, and especially to the universities which don't teach people this message. I mean, the book has many messages. This is one of them. And
Okay.
that you need to tell the younger policy makers or those who are interested in policy, and then also at the higher levels, that look, not everything can be run by line ministries or line departments. Some things have to be coordinated at a higher level. They don't have to be operational at a higher level. The operational has to be in the sectoral domain, but how it fits together has to be somewhere else. So this is my message, that how it fits together, somebody has to have the picture. Then you say, fine, you are allowed, given this part of the picture, you are given this part of the picture. And my one nuance in all this is that you cannot have too much interdependence in operations.
Hmm.
Because if you have interdependence, then failure in one hurts the progress in the other.
Yeah.
So you need to have, I mean, it's a very complicated issue because you have to have the big picture, you have to have the links, but you have to make sure that, there's no domino effect. There's failure in one, ding, 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 it goes across to others and hurts them. So how do you do it? Honestly, it's a very tough problem. Very tough problem to create a design of policy in which the parts work together, but failure in one, it's like the airplanes, the airplanes, they do
Yeah.
have this, that one engine fails, it's still okay.
Yeah.
On a 4 engine plane, two fail, they can still fly it.
Right.
You have to be skilled pilot, but you can still fly it. In fact, you can fly on one engine to land at an airport near you. If three fail, Even on one engine, you can. So that kind of a design has to be in place. That look, but how to do it? It's tough. I agree with you. It's very tough.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know how
think
to.
it can happen at let's say, a corporate level.
Yeah,
So because the scale is smaller,
yeah,
the challenge actually comes at scale.
yeah,
So a country like Singapore can do it probably,
yeah,
because it's not difficult. But as you come to India, the US, countries like who have like us large, complicated, diverse demographics.
mm.
So I think that really becomes actually the added layers of difficulty.
I agree.
So
I agree.
yeah, so I think that's really where, at least if we can identify as well, like along the process, of course, I mean, these are just conversations now, but I think as we dig deeper, I think if we figure out why is it complex and where does it stick, then I think we are still able to maneuver and say that, okay, these are the risks, and can we mitigate those risks using some sort of a technique, some sort of
Yeah,
way out, or some sort of a roadmap,
yeah.
and things like that. So at a policy level, yes, much more difficult. But in terms of, let's say, doing the same from a corporate level becomes like at least a template which can be followed.
Yeah,
And
so we have to have tasks that are discrete to particular agencies, but that they add up, that is the key. How
yes,
do they add up? That is the. Anyway, I agree with you. I don't have final thoughts on it. I just started writing my chapters. I haven't yet finalized the thought, and my co-author is also there. We are thinking about it. But you have just told me something that I was already thinking of.
good.
I wasn't
Uh,
thinking in terms of what you call as EVs and hydrogen and all, because I'm now thinking of, look, Pakistan 2 years ago, one third of Pakistan was flooded.
yeah,
Now, nature does not differentiate between Pakistan and India. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop at the border. So, if it's going to flood Pakistan, chances are it's going to flood us too,
yeah,
right? And so, what are we going to do? Of course, Pakistan is small, so one third can be flooded, but we are not that small. But still, one state is flooded. What are you going to do?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have any plans. You have
Yeah.
no thinking. Okay, good. Anything else you want to add here?
Uh, yeah, I think this was the real message that I had in my mind when I came on this. I mean, I think the rest of it is probably I can talk about my experience, but I think that's
Okay, so let's leave it at that. I
yeah,
want to talk to you offline a little bit. So since you've delivered the main message and it has been understood and received, let's end it here today and let's talk offline. So thank you so much, Anjan, for being here. I'll be back with another young person or an expert. Till then, bye, everybody.